And I am going to get into how the increasingly unhinged movements to tear down anyone and anything that does not conform to the constantly mutating standards of wokeness is not only useless against this system and the rising fascism, but is actually serving to fuel it. By the end of my talk, I aim to make clear that between woke identity politics on the one hand and real revolution on the other, there are two radically different and opposed understandings of the problem that humanity faces, two radically different and opposed methodologies and moralities, and two radically different and opposed visions of the world that we should be fighting for and that is actually possible. One requires work, intellectual courage, real struggle and sacrifice, but can open the door to human emancipation. The other is degrading, cowardly, and lazy, and only accelerates humanity's current trajectory towards untold horror.
Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is our 150th episode on June 1st, 2023. My name is Andy Zee. I'm the host of the show, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. You are watching a show about the world and for a radically new world through a real revolution to overthrow the system we live under, capitalism, imperialism.
And my name is Sunsara Taylor. I am the co-host of the Revolution Nothing Less show. And here on this show, we base ourselves on and we apply the revolutionary leadership and the new framework for human emancipation, the new communism that has been forged by the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian. And we invite and we challenge you every week to learn about this revolution and to join us in this pivotal time in history to fight to make this revolution real.
There have been 32 earthquakes this past month in the Los Angeles area. Most of them are small, the largest 3.0 magnitude, and most people don't feel it. Most people who do feel it don't pay it any mind. But it tells you something important, that the earth is moving beneath your feet, that there's a potential for big earthquakes. And at the same time, there are big rumblings, big tremors, political earthquakes that are happening right now that are killing people, destroying lives in the proxy war between the U.S., NATO military bloc and Russia, two imperialist gangster blocs fighting each other over world domination. This indicates tremendous danger for humanity, which I'm going to be getting into later in today's show. And there's heightening diplomatic maneuvering, economic warfare, and actual military action between the U.S. and China. All of this threatens the potential of world war, nuclear war that could destroy humanity. There are tremors going on, big tremors. You're feeling it. You see immigrants from Afghanistan going across the ocean, coming up from South America through Central America, braving deserts and jungles to get to the U.S. border, only to be turned away and put into camps. And this is happening in the Mediterranean, all over the world. There's big things, big tremors that are happening, and people sense there's big things happening here, with the tremendous polarization all through society and concentrated at the top of society between the business as usual, war, criminal, Democratic Party up against this fascist movement that's threatening to tear up the norms of society and impose a much more openly vicious, white supremacist, patriarchal, xenophobic society. All of this indicates how much things are changing. And it's described right here in this proclamation from the RevComs. We are the RevComs. We're working for a real revolution and a whole new way of life. And it says right at the beginning of this, that all these outrages can be understood because we base ourselves on the new communism brought forward by the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian. It gives us a clear understanding that this is all caused by the system of capitalism, imperialism, which is the source of all the outrages and madness that people are subjected to here and all over the world. That's what this show is about. That's what we're going to get into today. I'm going to talk about war. Sunsara is going to talk about what she's been doing in an application of this strategy. And we're going to talk to you about how you can contribute to this movement by donating money and by going out and raising donors, people to be involved in supporting this movement for revolution. And that's we're going to be focusing on a webinar coming up this Sunday. I'll be talking with Annie Day at the end of today's show.
All right, Andy, let's dive right in.
We opened today's RNL show speaking of the proxy war that the U.S. and its NATO military bloc is waging against Russia. An unjust war on both sides between imperialist rivals. When this war was launched over a year ago, few outside of Bob Avakian and this show were calling this a proxy war. Much of the progressive and decent people were being pumped up and manipulated to rally behind Ukraine by Biden and the Democratic Party.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. Never.
A president and a party that are nothing if not imperialist war criminals for their actions over their entire history, as well as by the media and shills like Sean Penn.
They need more ammunition, more long-range precision weapons, and yes, fighter jets. What we are waiting for seems to still be attached to this overcautious concern related to nuclear weapons.
Overcautious concern related to nuclear weapons.
And there were some small factions of idiotic so-called leftists who, along with the hardcore fascists around Trump, who supported Russia's unjust imperialist invasion of Ukraine. Today, this war has step by step escalated with more and more high-tech weapons and intelligence from the U.S. NATO war bloc flowing into Ukraine, such that today it is widely recognized that the blatant and scarcely hidden fact is that this is a proxy war, utilizing Ukrainian soldiers and people as cannon fodder to advance U.S. imperialist interests.
The United States isn't pushing back on the rhetoric. The Russians are going, hey, the U.S. is fighting a proxy war against us. I think the answer is yes, we are.
Just in the last few days, not only have Russian missiles rained down on the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, along with vital infrastructure around the country destroyed, but drones have attacked buildings in Moscow, the capital of Russia. The U.S. and Ukraine each say, we didn't do it, but destruction reaching the capital of Russia is not a minor problem for an imperial power and leader such as Putin and Russia. Escalation speeds up with hundreds of thousands of Russian troops thrown at Ukraine, while the U.S. and NATO supply high-tech tanks and F-16 fighter jets.
U.S. officials said 31 Abrams tanks would arrive in Germany at the end of May, and hundreds of Ukrainian troops will be taught how to operate and repair them.
US and G7 allies agreed to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine.
This has been a long-standing request of the Ukrainians, and it's followed a similar pattern to what we've seen with other requests for advanced weapons, that first the allies say no, and then they say maybe, and then they finally get to yes.
Both Putin and Biden have, like rattlesnakes, rattled their nuclear fangs, with Putin saying, quote,
«И при угрозе территориальной целостности нашей страны для защиты России и нашего народа мы, безусловно, используем все имеющиеся в нашем распоряжении средства». Это не блеф.
And his defense chief, Dmitry Medvedev, made this clear, quote, nuclear powers have never lost major conflicts on which their fate depends, end quote. A month later, Biden said, quote, if in fact things continue down the path they are going, end quote, in Ukraine, the world faces, quote, the prospect of Armageddon, with his defense secretary declaring that the U.S. strategic objective in this war was to weaken Russia.
We want to see Russia weakened.
These imperialist rival gangsters are literally holding the fate of humanity hostage to their dog-eat-dog, expand-or-die imperialist system. And then along comes Timothy Snyder, Yale history professor whose expertise is expounding on Hannah Arendt's bankrupt theory of totalitarianism, which is an incoherent and empty attack on communism. Snyder's is a career in defense of bourgeois democracy. He parlayed this to popularity critiquing Trump's fascism, and now he is all over the liberal media shilling for the U.S. proxy war against Russia.
We should do our very best to try to make this war in Ukraine end as quickly as possible, which means, to be clear, the Ukrainians winning it as quickly as possible.
On May 14th, he wrote an article in the New York Times that is stunning in its subservience to U.S. imperialism with its logic of America as a force for good. Bob Avakian has written a response titled, "Don't worry about a nuclear war. If there is one, Russia will lose. The dangerous demagoguery of Timothy Snyder on behalf of U.S. imperialism and its proxy war in Ukraine." This title says a lot. It's almost unbelievable that this learned professor could actually make the argument that Snyder does. And while I am strongly recommending that you all read Bob Avakian's sharp polemic on our website, revcom.us, and therefore I don't want to recap it here, I will read how Bob Avakian begins. Quote, he says, Snyder did not directly say, don't worry about nuclear war. If there is one, Russia will lose. But he might as well have said that. The actual title of his article is Putin is Fighting and Losing His Last War. And this article is a shameless apology for U.S. imperialism overall and specifically in its proxy war against Russia in Ukraine, end quote. Later, Bob Avakian goes on to write this, quote, listen to this logic from Snyder. If Russia detonated a nuclear weapon, it would lose that jealously guarded treasure of superpower status. Really? That is all or the most essential thing that would happen if Russia used nuclear weapons? Here, Snyder is truly blinded by his American supremacist arrogance, and he seems set on obscuring reality for the rest of us, end quote. And after this, BA goes into the even more demagogic and dangerous logic from Snyder. But to find out about that, you need to read it yourself. But what we are going to do is show you a short clip from the interview that Sunsara and I did with Bob Avakian last fall, where he nails the danger and the stand that people here need to wake up to and to take up. We've played this before, and in my opinion, this clip needs to be seen and taken to heart by millions of people. And when you go to revcom.us to read BA's piece, The Dangerous Demagoguery of Timothy Snyder, dig further into more than 100 sharp polemics and analyses that Bob Avakian has written in the last 2 years. These provide tremendous guidance and direction for how to understand the madness we face and the danger humanity faces and the way out. A radically different way to think, to act, and to become part of overthrowing this monster that is driving the world to the brink of destruction. The great danger and shock that the Ukraine war has put before the world, and the potential for far greater shocks, can shake people, giving rise to profound questioning. These jolts could also give rise to even sharper divides than exist now in the ruling class, opening the potential for millions to break free from the system that is careening to all-out war, opening up the possibility of real revolution. And we're going to follow this clip from Bob Avakian and the interview that we did with him with a segment that we did last year on the RNL Show, just a month after the Ukraine war began, that brings home the danger that those who rule this system are putting humanity in.
And all this ridiculous stuff, people sticking their heads down or, I stay in my own lane. You think if there's a nuclear war, it won't touch your lane? I mean, come on, let's get fucking serious around here. You think if U.S. and China go to war, your lane is going to be somehow, I'm just going along in my lane. I mean, people need to wake up and get serious. This is a contest between oppressors, the world's leading oppressors, with the U.S. #1. Yes, USA #1 oppressor and plunderer in the entire world for decades. And, it's up to us to oppose our own ruling class. Yes, we also oppose Russian imperialism. Yes, we also oppose Chinese imperialism. But we're not living in Russia, and we're not living in China. And if we were living in Russia and China, our primary focus would be on opposing our ruling class where we were. We live in the United States. All these crimes committed by these imperialists are done in our name. Supposedly, the army goes out there to protect our freedoms and blah, blah, blah. They go out there to plunder people so that U.S. imperialism can suck the blood of literally billions of people. And if you think I'm exaggerating, go on the website, revcom.us, and read the articles by Raymond Latta, which get into the parasitism of U.S. imperialism, how it is an international exploiter and super exploiter of people in the global south or the third world, the poorer countries of the world, and what this has to do with what the U.S. looks like internally and how it thrives. Even the consumer goods that people have are cheapened, more affordable to the massive population here because of the way that people are viciously exploited. More than 150 million children in the third world who have no childhood. Hundreds of millions of women, like those in Bangladesh working in factories making the stuff that goes to Walmart or whatever. People all over the world in similar situations. It is our responsibility to oppose this primarily, while we also oppose these other imperialists. This is where we live. This is being done in all these massive crimes, and now the threat of existential threat of nuclear war. A threat to that's what existential means, threat to the existence of humanity. All that's being done in our name. And idiots like, Steve Van Sant aside, now I'm giving him a break by saying idiocy. We have a responsibility to first and foremost oppose our own imperialist ruling class and what it's doing. And more generally, I've made a statement and I'll make it again. The masses of people in the world, and this is very acutely and urgently posed now, the masses of people in the world cannot any longer afford. It was always terrible that these are the people ruling the world, but it's now acutely posed. We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to dominate the world and to determine the destiny of humanity. They need to be overthrown as quickly as possible.
On August 6, 1945, a blazing, million-degree fireball suddenly appeared just above the Japanese city of Hiroshima, instantly killing, burning alive, or vaporizing tens of thousands. Firestorms engulfed the city. Shockwaves and winds over 1,000 miles an hour came next, shattering bodies and buildings, hurling men, women, and children through the air. Nearly all structures were destroyed over a mile from ground zero. There were red, burned, and bloated dead bodies piled up high. The corpses with the guts and the eyes popped out. Clouds of dust turned the morning into twilight. And later, black rain fell. This is from American Crime Case number 97, August 6th and 9th, 1945, the nuclear incineration of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You can find this at the website revcom.us. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped the first atomic nuclear weapon on the city of Hiroshima. 70 to 80,000 people, around 30% of the population of Hiroshima at the time, were killed by the blast and the resultant firestorm. Almost 70% of the structures were destroyed. Almost all of the vegetation was wiped out. But 170 Ginkgo trees survived. This small tree, comes from one of those 170 trees. The seeds of Hiroshima's Ginkgos have been sent to cities and towns around the world. This young tree is growing in a botanical garden I often visit on the campus of UCLA. This tree represents, as a friend has said, the worst of humanity as well as the best of humanity's aspirations. The dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima by the United States followed 3 days later by the dropping of a second atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Nagasaki are unconscionable actions that were not militarily necessary to win the Second World War, but were designed to intimidate the whole world, especially the then socialist Soviet Union, the first revolutionary socialist country, delivering an atomic terrorist message that the U.S. intended to reign supreme over the whole world. Dropping this weapon of mass destruction on a civilian city that had no military value was consistent with the whole history of the United States, founded in slavery and the genocide of the native people and the theft of their land, and then the expansion of the U.S. imperialist empire through the bloody wars of conquest from the end of the 19th century down to today. In the Handbook for Revolution, Basics from the Talks and Writings of Bob Avakian, Chapter 1, quote number 6 says this in part, quote, "Imperialism means war. War to put down the resistance and rebellion of the oppressed. War between rival imperialist states. It means the leaders of these states can condemn humanity to unbelievable devastation, perhaps even total annihilation, with the push of a button," end quote. This is the worst of humanity imprisoned in the exploitation, oppression, rivalry, and wars of the system of capitalism, imperialism. But my friend also said that this lone ginkgo tree, spread with others around the world to be living witness and reminder of the war crime of Hiroshima, also represents the best of humanity in the promise and potential of cooperation and preservation of life on Earth. The stark yet liberating reality, the truth, is that for that potential to be realized requires nothing less than a real revolution to overthrow this monstrous imperialist system and birth a radically different and far better world guided by the new communism as developed by the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, B.A. We're putting revolution on the map this year. And on May 1st, we announced the publication of We Are the RevComs. You've heard about it on this show. It's for real. It describes the problem we face, the solution, the time we're living in, and the strategy to make a revolution. Look, we don't want to kid you. This is a big deal, making a revolution. It's about the hardest thing you can do. And right now, the conditions are beginning to sharpen up in society, as we just talked about around the question of the danger of nuclear war, where it could become possible, and yet it's not what people know about or have been thinking about. In order for this word of this revolution and this revolutionary leader that we have in Bob Avakian to become an actual force in society, is going to take an awful lot of money, a tremendous amount of money. And we're in the beginning of a $100,000 fund drive. And this coming Sunday, we're going to kick it off. And I'm here with Annie Day.
Good to be here.
All right. And Annie's going to be one of the hosts of this live stream on Sunday at 2 o'clock. So why don't you tell people what to expect?
So tune in Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern, and you can watch it on this channel, youtube.com/therevcoms. And people are going to hear how we see dealing with this problem of the fact that people don't know about this revolution. They're suffering for it. There's tremendous amount of hopelessness. People have got their lid sitting on their thinking in their dreams, and they're ignoring the train that's hurtling down the tracks, not just threatening their lives, but the future of the whole planet. And yet there's a way to break through this. There's the potential for an actual revolution. But in order to make that, it's going to require funds. So on this live stream on Sunday, people are going to hear where your funds will go that can make all the difference. There's going to be 3 parts of this live stream. One is people are going to hear from Sunsara Taylor. And we're going to talk about the difference of this anti-woke initiative that she's been part of, really bringing real revolution to answer and to contend on a big scale with this woke lunacy. People are going to hear, you and I are going to talk about the interviews that were done with the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, on this show, and the difference it could make if this actually got the audience commensurate with what's concentrated in these interviews. The fact that there's a leader who comes out of the movements of the 1960s and not only hasn't given up, but has advanced on the road of revolution. I can't express the words for this interview in the time that we have, but people need to see this. They need to know that there's hope in a time of darkness. And 3, we're going to talk about this proclamation and how we see having a big impact in all of society, and in particular reaching the sections of people that catch the most hell under this system. And how we see carrying out what is that proclamation lays out a multi-pronged strategy for revolution. But none of that's going to be possible without funds on a major scale.
To make a revolution, an actual revolution, takes a lot of people, and it takes a lot of money. A lot of money. There's people who don't know about this. We've got to get the word up in huge quantities. We need money for advertising. We need to put up, the walls need to be postered with this proclamation. People need to know. But there are also people who do know, Annie, but they don't really see that it's possible. They don't know how we're going to do it. This proclamation indicates that in the work, in the development of the strategy and the goal of this revolution, there actually is a way to get there. There's a roadmap that Bob Avakian has developed. He's analyzed that there's a time when we can do this and what the alternative is if we don't do it. It's put very mildly when he says the future is something terrible or something truly emancipated. That something terrible is quite horrific. I think we brought some of that out in the first segment of today's show. But there's a roadmap, and this roadmap, like you used to get, before and you can still get it with your Google Maps, it traces how you have to go, where you go, this way and that way. But there's a destination at the end, and he's written a constitution for a new socialist republic in North America, a new society that would actually be able to go to work on uprooting all the shit that people have to put up with this society, all the divisions among people. This has to end, and it's deeply felt in society. People feel this deeply. Depression's a mass epidemic. Teenagers are committing suicide in record numbers. This is outrageous, and we're killing people over in Ukraine. Yes, we're killing people. This country, your government is through proxies and having the Ukrainian soldiers be your cannon fodder, but you are killing people there. For what? For a U.S. empire that treats people in this country? If you're black, brown, step out of line, you can be shot by the police. Ravages Afghanistan for years. Then people are having to flee and they cross an ocean and go through jungles and deserts to get to the border, and they get treated like criminals and thrown into camps, raped and worse. We need a revolution. And Bob Avakian has analyzed that it's time when that could be made. So we're going to get into all this in some depth on the show and how we're going to work on it. Because for all the people who don't know, there's people who do know about this, but they don't really see the possibility. They don't see how they can be a part of it. They don't see how they're giving money to this revolution makes it possible. We talked last time, we want to do a lot of advertising for these interviews that you were talking about, where Bob Avakian is such heart and soul. And he's real hardcore for revolution. He doesn't mince any words. We got to overthrow this motherfucker to make an actual revolution and then bring about the world that's concentrated in that Constitution. This is what we're going to be getting into, and you're going to meet the people who are doing the work. There's people doing the work right now. Is it easy? Is everything going just our way? It's all hunky-dory? Just get on board? It's not a love train, but there's a lot of love in this revolution, okay? A lot of love in this revolution, but there's a lot of work and it needs a lot of money. And we're bringing that to people in this. We're going to bring it to people. We're going to bring it this Sunday. And then you need to bring not just yourself, but you need to bring some other people to watch this live stream. Annie, I'm looking forward to this because I know if we had the money to do what we could do now, it could make all the difference in the world. That's what's going to happen this Sunday. You need to be there. You need to bring people with you. You need to get your family to watch it. If you're watching a game or a match or something on TV, put it on, whatever you call that thing, DVR, record it, watch it later on, because this you need to watch live, and you need to contribute while we're doing it so we can get to that $100,000 over the next several weeks in this fund drive.
Well, look, I mean, I think you brought a lot to bear about the situation we face all across this country. And if you're going to make a revolution, it's got to be C2C. We actually have to build up the networks and the forces for revolution. So if you're thinking about what's going to be required to actually go for the seizure of power, we have to build not just a linear one-to-one, but we have to build the forces for that now. And so when people step in and give, whether you're in Kankakee, Illinois, whether you're in New York City, whether you're in San Diego or in Northern California, wherever you are, if it's one person or if it's 25 people, you are coming together with others like you. And you are becoming part of something bigger than yourself that's about changing the whole world. And so when people tune in on Sunday, they're going to hear from each other. We're going to have testimonials. We're going to have challenges from people. Why are they giving? What are they giving? Whether it be one person is going to give $5,000 and wants to match that and have people, meet that challenge. Other people are crocheting blankets for the revolution. Whatever you're doing at whatever level, you're working together with others to build a community for revolution that's about actually making revolution together with people like you all across the country and completely different from you all across the country. And that's actually is what's required to go for the seizure of power when the conditions come into being to make that possible.
Yeah, I think that last point's very important. So Annie, just before we close this segment, you had a testimonial from somebody who gave.
Yeah, I wanted to end with a comment from a sociology professor who gave $1,000 during the last fund drive. And I think it captures, well, I'll just read it. He said, "I donated because the RevComs are right, that this is a rare time. And we need to instill in young people especially the hope that a new world can be achieved and the determination for revolution." And that's what you're going to hear on Sunday. You're going to hear the hope and you're going to hear the determination and you're going to hear how you can be part of that. So tune in, contribute, call everyone you know, and we'll see you on Sunday.
All right, looking forward.
There is a fund drive going on. There is a fund drive to raise money, and that money is necessary because there are things that need to be done, and they need to be done now.
I'm fed up with the system that we're living under now. Capitalist imperialism has no hope for the future, and the revolution does have hope for the future. And that's why I support the fundraising efforts.
Inspired by RevComs in Cleveland, we took up the challenge of a food plate sale. One of the things that we learned is that there's actually a lot of line struggle around the direction of the future of things, the direction of the revolution involved in such a simple process as cooking food and selling food.
I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm with the RevComs, and what we have been doing here in Cleveland is putting on fundraisers. We've been having dinner sales, bake sales, and etc. to help raise money to put revolution on the map because it is urgently needed.
I am giving $325 as a donation today because of Bob Avakian's revolution.
You can make a change. You can make a difference. You can make a donation.
For years, Bob Avakian has been sharply calling out woke identity politics for its denial of objective reality, for the way it has people caught up in canceling each other or seeking to hide in safe spaces, or to get in on this system rather than fighting to get rid of this system through a real revolution. And for the first time in a major way, the RevComs took this analysis to the public square last Wednesday night. Over 125 students, professors, and others turned out at UCLA to hear Sunsara Taylor speak on woke lunacy versus real revolution. The evening was electrifying. Sunsara was taking on all comers. This was just the beginning of what needs to impact throughout society. And our plan, with your help, is to take this much further.
Last week on this show, we broadcast for the full episode, a special episode that shared my full presentation at UCLA, Woke Lunacy versus Real Revolution. And it was a thrilling evening. It was very, like you said, it was electric in the auditorium. In my presentation, which laid the foundation for a really pretty rich, wild, and woolly question and answer that followed, I got into 4 major questions. 1, does each different identity group, and even each different individual, have their own truth? Or is there one unified objective reality that all of us can come to understand using the tools of science? 2, is the problem in society marginalization, or is it oppression? And why does this matter? 3, is cancel culture a tool that empowers the powerless? Or is it a grotesque expression of the values of this dog-eat-dog system and the profoundly lowered sights of those who cannot see beyond it? And 4, should our goal be to guard ourselves with trigger warnings and safe spaces within this monstrous system? Or do we all need to get out of our comfort zones and put it on the line to make a revolution, to get to a society and a world where all of humanity, oppressed humanity everywhere, can finally live safely? And I got into a number of other things as well. And like I said, this laid a foundation for a very rich exchange and also contention. So in the room, we kind of had a microcosm of what goes on in society. We had folks who came who were really indoctrinated in the woke outlook, and they came to try to poke holes in what I was presenting, what we were presenting. You had a pathetic band of counter-revolutionaries wrapping themselves, cloaking themselves in wokeness, who came in and tried to disrupt the event and then fled. You had a crew of MAGA morons, like fascist youth, spewing misogyny and anti-communism, a really ugly band of them. And then you had the majority of the audience who was there, who were very serious, very curious, wanted to hear a serious presentation on what is the problem in society and how do we get out of this?
Yeah, and I think in terms of these 2 polls that you had in the classroom, in terms of the Republican fascist students on the one hand and these wokesters on the other hand arguing for identity politics and all this, that really did typify what, exists in the larger society, and way too much sets the terms, the way that this fascism is getting more and more lunatic, and same with this woke thing, and they're clashing, but they're all also reinforcing each other and feeding each other while they're clashing. And people are just being paralyzed and suffocated in the face of this, decent people, right? But what was so significant about this event, unlike what happens all too often in the larger society, is that, you cut through all this, and really fought for a whole different, and led the audience down a whole different path. First of all, just completely demolishing this woke identity politics and, really taking on those Republican fascists and just deflating them. They were all puffed up and everything, and we'll see some of this in a minute when we show the Q&A. But, really bringing alive what's the fundamental problem in this society in terms of this system of capitalism, imperialism, and what's the real solution, and particularly, giving life to the Constitution for the new socialist republic written by Bob Avakian. So, this was so exciting, and it was also a great learning experience for everyone in the audience to see this clash of ideas.
Yeah, so tonight and over the next couple of episodes, we're going to be sharing most of the large portions of the Q&A that followed the presentation. And tonight we want to start with a really important question that came up about science and what it means to be scientific.
Hey, I didn't come here with an agenda. I'm just a little bit disappointed with a couple of things, and I want to address it super calmly. I think you build a foundation of your speech on working against identity politics. Yet, I think so conveniently, and it was kind of ignorant, that all of your examples of oppression or people going through struggle were all from the black community. So if you could so conveniently use one specific ethnicity to kind of propagate your ideals, is that not identity politics in itself? That's my first question. My second question is, you spoke about how, the upward mobility of certain people in marginalized communities doesn't matter because they're kind of still propagating like these oppressive structures. But since you're so empathetic to the rights and the ways that black people feel, are you disregarding the kind of role models that Nelson Mandela was, or like Martin Luther King was, or even like a Jay-Z was, right? Like people that made progress in their communities and inspired people to do better are somehow not appreciated now because they're like fulfilling some oppressor's needs, which didn't make sense to me. I feel like, yes, there's a lot of stupidity on the far left that needs to be addressed, but fighting it with more stupidity is not going to help, right? We need to fight with compromise and reason. And just throwing the word science around doesn't make it rational. It's just like, I'm sorry if this sounds offensive, but I study science and engineering, and nothing was scientific in the first half of the conversation. It was just, I'm going to abuse the fact that one certain community went through a lot of bad things in my country, and I'm going to use that to kind of propagate what I feel about them, right? Which sounded a little ignorant in my opinion. So I just want to know your views on that.
Well, let me start with your first question, which is that you allege I only spoke about what black people face in this society, and that's a form of identity politics. In fact, it is not. First of all, I spoke about the Bangladeshi women in the sweatshops sewing our clothes. I talked about women who've been forced to have children against their will in that form of enslavement. I spoke about trans people who have faced over 500 laws this year introduced or passed, not to mention the terror that's enforced against them. I spoke about what happens on this planet as a whole as it is heating due to the destruction of climate change driven forward by the system of capitalism, imperialism. So if you missed all that, I'm not surprised if you also missed some of the scientific undergirdings of it. But to be fair, I will walk through it again. I speak about black people in a very pronounced way when we come to revolution because the exploitation, the enslavement, the dehumanization, and the degradation that's been inflicted on black people is foundational to this society and this system. And that is scientifically a fact. It's evidence-based. The wealth of this country, the territorial reach of this country, the military strength of this country got its roots in American slavery, the chattel slavery of black people. And then on that foundation, the ideology of white supremacy, of black inferiority, was propagated. It was made a bedrock of one of the glues of this society, and it has been woven into this society ever since. The forms of oppression have changed. It took a civil war to end slavery, but then what happened? After not even 10 years of Reconstruction, where black people were brought into some rights within this country, that was betrayed. The troops were pulled out, and black people were re-enslaved in new conditions, slavery by another name, sharecropping for generations, serf-like conditions enforced through terror, lynch mob terror and violence. And the troops were pulled out to go and finish off the extermination of the native peoples. Okay? Then another generation comes up in the face of changes in the U.S. economy and the need to pull black people out of the South and into the factories. Black people stood up and they waged struggle in a civil rights movement. They gave their lives. They stood up. White people stood with them. They went down from the north and stood with them. This upended Jim Crow. It was heroic that many did just unbelievably brave things. And then that was dismantled. And what did this system come back with? A new Jim Crow of mass incarceration that has ground up millions of black lives. So when I tell the story, this is science, when I tell the story of a black woman in Harlem with binoculars next to her window watching in terror every time her 12-year-old, 13-year-old son crosses the street because of what police do every day to black people. Every fucking day. When I talk about that, that is a particular that concentrates a huge reality that is defining to this country. And that's scientifically true. It's evidence-based. It's woven into the fabric of this society. It's culture, it's economics, and it's global reach. Right. And so we could debate. If you want to argue that's not scientific, bring some evidence. If you didn't hear the science, then please. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me that it's a marginal thing. Tell me that to talk about that, I'm pimping off of it. I'm acknowledging reality. You want to say it's not defining to this country, that we shouldn't talk about it?
I want you to talk about it.
I am talking about it, yeah.
Okay, so just the fact that something actually happened or is true doesn't, anything that's empirically based is not science, right? It's like saying anything that's true is a scientifically, like, it's science. It's not. So I understand.
Okay. Okay. Let me help. Oh, go ahead. Maybe he should get the mic.
I understand that your point is I want to be building arguments based on reason and rationale.
Here, take the mic just so it gets.
I understand that your point is I want to be building arguments on reason and rationale, but that doesn't mean that it's scientific, and that doesn't mean that it's false or wrong.
Okay.
I'm saying that the validity of your argument doesn't increase by throwing the word science out.
Well, okay, so I would argue that science actually can be applied to all of reality, not just narrowly in engineering or in the natural sciences. No, this is important. What you're raising is widely felt, it's widely believed, it's widely taught, I'm sure, on this campus, that you can apply science to medicine, to nature, to the natural world. There's the hard sciences, but when you get to social reality, it's just opinions, it's experience, whatever. No. You can apply science to everything. Everything that is part of reality, which societies are, can be analyzed scientifically. Yeah. All science means, in a universal sense, is it's an evidence-based process. You gather evidence about reality, and you look for the deeper causes of the patterns in reality. And you can apply that to a society, just like you can apply it to a rainforest, just like you can apply it to a virus. You can say, what is the most defining thing about any given society? What undergirds it? What are the laws and its functioning? And a scientific analysis of this society says the most defining thing about this country is it's a capitalist, imperialist mode of production. That all of our needs are met through exploitation and people laboring in conditions all over the world to get the food we need, the clothes we wear, the pens we use, the microphones. All of this is created through global networks of production. And that all of our cultures, all of our ways of living, all of our ways of relating grow out of and have to reflect and more or less correspond to that. And so when we live in a society where the exploitation and oppression of black people has been woven into that mode of production all the way down to today, it leads to the culture and the society and the kind of police terror that we have today. That's applying science to a social contradiction. And so that's one example. There was other questions he raised. You want to say something?
Yeah, and an unscientific approach to society would say, look, here in America, we're all a bunch of individuals. You know, there's some social mobility. It's not like under feudalism, right, where, you know, you're a peasant, you're born a peasant, you die a peasant, or you're born a noble. Under capitalism, there's a little bit of social mobility. So, hey, Jay-Z, you know, he made it. He's a billionaire, so therefore, in America, anyone can make it. No, that would be and this is some great victory for black people, right? Jay-Z, a great victory for black people. Big Pimpin', that's a great role model for oppressed people. You know, this is how they fool you. This is how they fool you in this society. You know, they say, oh, in America, anyone can make it. This system is grinding up the lives of the masses of people. It's a capitalist system with white supremacy built into it. The masses of people are having their lives terrorized and ground up here, and even more so all over the world. And yet they hold up these few individuals who make it and say, look, in America, anyone can make it. And then they use that to say, oh, if you didn't make it, it's your own fault. And this is how people like Jay-Z, and she gave the example of Barack Obama, this is how they get used. In some ways, Obama was worse for black people than George Bush was. Obama got up there and said, and on Father's Day, and blamed black people for not pulling up their pants and being absent fathers. Mm-hmm. You know, he got up there after the police broke Freddie Gray's neck in Baltimore and called the people who stood up, you know, who stood up in the streets, he called them thugs. Imagine if Bush had done that. Imagine if Trump had done that. Everyone would say, it's a fucking racist-ass thing to say, you know, but Obama could get away with it. See, this is how they use people like this. And if you're putting forward these people as models and examples, anyone can make it, then you're getting played by the system and you're taking an unscientific approach. Okay. So we're going to play a bit more of the question and answer in a minute. But before we get to that, I want to stay on this question of science for a minute because, it's so central to whether or not people are going to be able to understand the world and radically change it. And it's also, right at the core of the new communism that Bob Avakian has developed, but it's also something that's so widely misunderstood, not just by this student, but by the millions of people who need to be part of this revolution. So we want to play a very relevant section from the interview that Bob Avakian did last fall. So let's watch.
I think it would be really helpful for our audience to hear from you a very basic understanding of what is science and why is it so important when, particularly at a time when so many people, including among the oppressed, are, oh, science, I'm not going to get vaccinated, I'm not going to do any of this, who knows what this is all about. So I think it's very important for people to understand what it, in its essence, actually is.
Look, science, there's an interview with Ardea Skybreak, Science and Revolution, and she makes a point and emphasizes it. Science is an evidence-based process. You go by you interact with the larger reality. You gather evidence and facts about what that shows, what comes forward, what the evidence is about different phenomena, different parts of reality. And then that's the raw material from which you then look to see what are the patterns in that reality, what might be superficial, what's deeper, what are the underlying causes of it. You have to go to work to do that. And then you analyze that and then you synthesize it. You draw together the essential things that you can learn from that about the patterns in reality and the underlying driving forces in reality. That's what science does in any particular, it's just a way of engaging and learning from reality by applying the method of analyzing what you're learning from interacting with reality and then drawing together the key things to get to the core, the essence of what that shows. And this is in whether it's medicine or any other physics, biology, archaeology, any other sphere of science. This is what people who are applying the scientific method are doing. And a lot of people these days are anti-scientific and they don't want to hear about science because some things have been really terrible things have been done in in the sphere of medicine, like the Tuskegee experiment, where they let black people who had syphilis just suffer from it to see what would happen. And there have been other things of that sort. But Skybreak also makes the point that is bad science. Mm-hmm. And you can use the good science, the actual scientific method that I was just speaking to actually learn about reality and to refute the bad science. And some people say, and it's understandable, people say, especially people who are oppressed, well, they've lied to us about everything. They lie to us, about the history of the country. They lie to us about the present reality of the country. They lie to us about how people are treated in this country now. They just lie. So why should we believe anything they say? And the answer to that is you shouldn't believe anything they say, quote unquote, but you should apply the scientific method to actually investigate reality and then do the work to determine what that actually shows. And for example, vaccines. All right, yes, it's true. The ruling class, down through history here in this country and other places, carried out terrible things in the name of science, including medical science. But then if you analyze further, do you really think, for example, the ruling class of this country wants total chaos where everybody is so sick that they can't even go to work, that the economy breaks down, that they're weakened in the international arena where they're contending with other imperialists like Russia and China? But more to the point, look at the actual evidence. Millions of people have gotten vaccines. There are almost no serious side effects from all this. Look at the actual evidence. Don't look at what somebody says on the social media. I mean, you can look at it, but then compare it to reality. Mm-hmm. Look at the actual evidence about, that's how Kyrie Irving and apparently Shaquille O'Neal and some of these other fools talking about how the world is flat. Look at the evidence. Is there any evidence to show that the earth is not flat, that it's actually round? There's plenty of scientific evidence. You can look into it yourself and you can determine for yourself what's true. And that's what the scientific method is. And everybody, not just scientists, but everybody when they're dealing not only with natural phenomena such as hurricanes, you know. Are hurricanes, do they occur because God wants to punish America because it's letting gay people have rights? That's what Christian fundamentalists say. Is that the truth? Or do hurricanes happen because a whole bunch of people in Philadelphia sneezed at the same time? You know, or is there actually some real causes of hurricanes? What are they? You know, look into it. Determine for yourself what the evidence shows on the basis of actually rationally engaging reality and looking at it and then synthesizing the evidence. Yes, the earth is actually round. I mean, I don't know if he's joking or not, but I read a statement by Shaquille O'Neal where he said, well, I've flown from one part of the world to another and I never tipped over, so how could it be round? I mean, I'm sorry, but you know, first of all, Shaquille O'Neal's a pig anyway, and proud of it. If you don't believe me, go check it out. You know, he brags about how he went on raids with the drug administration and stuck some drug dealers or alleged drug dealers' face down in the toilet. So, you know, I don't have anything good to say about Shaquille O'Neal to begin with, but this is a world-class level of ignorance to talk about that. I mean, if you put an ant on a basketball and it goes around the basketball, it's not going to flip over, okay? You know, and the same thing is true with the big sphere of the earth compared to a tiny airplane, okay? The airplane goes around like an ant going around a basketball. You're not going to flip over just because it's round, okay? I mean, but you know, don't take my word for it. Go do some work. That's one of the things we talk about in the culture, the lack of curiosity, you know, just laziness. You know, people not really wanting to do, you know, don't want to read a book, don't want to learn about history. You know, okay, maybe I'm overstating, it's not everybody, but it's way too much a phenomenon in the culture. You know, the lack of curiosity, it's one of the striking things. How are you ever going to bring into being a better world if you're not curious, including about the way the world is and why why it's the way it is? So, you know, do some work. You know, this is work anybody can do. Anybody can look into the evidence. Anybody can, you know, apply the scientific method to determine what's true. And that's what people need to do. I've said it before. Don't believe anything on faith. But go by the evidence. Go by the scientific method to determine what's actually true and not what's a bunch of bullshit that some people put out there, you know, to try to mislead you, or because they themselves are misled. You know, and may make you feel good for a little while, but it isn't going to change anything that makes you feel bad.
So we want to show just one more portion from the Q&A with you tonight, which really brought alive the stakes of the current moment.
Yes, I appreciate the meeting today. My question is, Speaker, considering the current living conditions many Americans endure and the disregard by the current Biden administration, such as inflation, housing, gas, and food, all while sending $80 billion to fund a war 5,000 miles away, that brings us closer to nuclear annihilation. And with the backing of figures like Bernie Sanders and Republican neocons like Lindsey Graham, Mike Pompeo, and Ron DeSantis, shouldn't the American people seriously consider seeking a 2024 election candidate who breaks free from the conventional Democrat and Republican status quo? After all, we need to stop nuclear escalation, give power to a movement by and for the working American people, and who are against the elites. A movement so vocal against the ruling class that they are enemy public number one for the CIA and FBI. What if I told you that this movement, this revolution, is the MAGA movement?
I would tell you that you're very wrong. Look, you can list, I'll tell you, you can list 1,001 things wrong with Biden. I mean, 1996 crime bill that is part of the mass incarceration, the fact that he is taking us and playing nuclear brinksmanship with Russia in Ukraine and moving us closer to war with China. You can name a million things wrong with Biden, and it will not make that white supremacist, fascist feces, Donald Trump, a hero of the people. Yeah. Okay? Donald Trump, who has said, and people have to take this seriously, this is a bunch of, you know, he has said, I'm running for, first of all, they staged a coup attempt. And you know what a failed coup attempt is? It is a dress rehearsal. And very few of them face serious charges, and most of the people who stood up against that have now been purged from the Republican Party. And when Donald Trump was at CNN Town Hall, he said, I will be your retribution. I'm coming back. I will be your retribution in 2024. He, again, refused to accept an election he loses, and he has a social base that is even more armed to the teeth, even more fanatical, even more ready to use violence to purge America of those they deem less than human. Donald Trump once again upheld ripping children from their parents' arms and caging them in that town hall. These are crimes against humanity, and they are being prepared in the offing right now. And the people in this country and all the decent people in this room better take note. When I say we need to make a choice because radical change is coming one way or the other, I'm not challenging you to step into the revolution as a lifestyle choice, as a timeless thing. Get into this because this is our thing. We need to build it up. We are moving in a very dangerous direction that this man just spoke about. MAGA. MAGA, the guy who said he wanted to take the troops and shoot protesters during Black Lives Matter. MAGA. With the Republican Abbott governor in Texas, who just pardoned a guy who shot and killed and was convicted of murder for killing somebody who stood up in the Black Lives Matter protest, convicted in a Texas court of murder. And he said, I'm going to pardon you, giving the green light to that kind of slaughter. This is what one half the country is preparing for. And the other half the country, and this is why we have to struggle against this woke shit, is caught up canceling each other over pronouns, obsessing with their feelings and their identities, and seeking safe spaces and trigger warnings, which are bullshit. There is no safe space in a nuclear war. There is no safe space in a fascist America, and there is no safe space for most people on this planet today. So I'm challenging those of you who are not deluded into MAGA bullshit to actually step into the revolution and spread this revolution. Get organized with this now while we still have a chance, while we have an opportunity to wrench this in a different direction. I'm putting that challenge very much to all of you who are still sorting out your thinking, to sign up tonight, to get organized with us, to get into this We Are the RevCom statement, to spread it, to join the Revolution Club, to join this tour and help spread this tour, because we have to wake up so many others in this country who are sleeping through this right now. So this last question should really bring us back to the stakes of this moment. With the MAGA fascists mobilized and way too many of the decent people caught up and intimidated by woke folk and identity politics hustlers. And the way that we cut through this in this program on one campus is very significant, but this needs to radiate in society right now, and urgently, because we are in a time of convulsive change that is headed right now, accelerated in an accelerated fashion towards a really, really horrific future. But there's also potential to wrench a revolution out of this. And this campaign, taking on woke, waking up a new generation and winning them to revolution and to science and rationality, and to debate that out, is a crucial part of making this revolution in this rare time. This is what Bob Avakian has charted and the roadmap he's laid out. And this is what we're fighting to apply in this tour. And so we want to really call on you to step into this. We can't spread this without your involvement. To the campuses, into the intellectual life of this country. We have big plans. We want to ask you to tune in this Sunday. Once again, tune in this Sunday to the live stream, to the fundraising live stream, June 4th, where we're going to be on. We're going to be talking about this. You're going to hear more about the rest of the work the Revolution is doing, and you're going to find the ways to donate and help raise money for this tour to get out.
Yeah, it is so important, because this event at UCLA, was really significant, but it was really just the beginning. So all of you watching this have, a big role to play in, spreading this event far and wide. Spread the last episode of the RNL Show where you can watch Sunsara's speech. Send that to everyone you know. This show as well, with the question and answer sessions. And in the upcoming episodes, we're going to be playing more of these questions and answers. And go to revcom.us, where you can actually get into the work of Bob Avakian, get deeper into these questions on, he's done so much work over years on the question of woke identity politics, the philosophy behind it, the politics, the morality of this cancel culture, all that. Get into it at revcom.us and, contact us, email us, and be part of bringing this tour, the speaking tour, to your campus. Or if you're a student or a professor, or if you're not, help open up doors so that can happen. And definitely, whatever you do, tune in this Sunday to the live stream. You'll learn more about this whole initiative, and you can be part of donating to it too.
All right, Sunsara, that brings us to the end of this 150th show of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show.
I'm very sorry I did not bring balloons. It's a really big deal. I'm so happy we have our 150th.
Well, maybe the crew can put some balloons,
put some balloons on. Okay.
All right.
And we will see you back here next week at 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. See, Andy's not the only one who can get the time zones right. And don't miss us this Sunday for the fundraising live stream.
Yeah, so good night from all of us here at the crew, myself, Sunsara. See you next week.